and moving the ark. When it came to moving the holy ark, the Aron HaKodesh, and a tragedy that took place, which was attributed to David HaMelech, to King David's mistake or King David's actions. And we're going to use that mistake as a bit of a lesson in understanding our relationship with Torah. So even though the class will be about King David and about David HaMelech and about this incident, we're going to take away the connection that we are supposed to learn from it to the Torah and the depth that the Torah is meant to have, the depth of an impact the Torah is meant to have in our life. So the text that we have in our Torah portion that we're focused on, and that's sort of like what leads us into the conversation. That's pretty much all the Torah portion of Nasai really gives us to this topic, is the transportation of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and how it was done. There were wagons, there were Levites, and the children of Levi, in other words, the descendants of Levi, the Levites were tasked with transporting all the details and all the equipment of the ark, and there were very specific instructions. However, let's look at verse number 9, because that's what we want to focus on. The sons of Kahas. And who were the sons of Kahas? Sons of Kahas had a very special mission. What was their mission? They did not give any work in sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. With transporting the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Why? Because for incumbent upon them was the work involving the holy objects. They had a special transportation mission. In other words, they were preoccupied with something else, which they were to carry on their shoulders. They were supposed to carry something on their shoulders, so they were exempt from all the other transportation requirements. What was it? The holy vessels. What are we talking about, the holy vessels? Specifically the Aron. I mean, there are other holy vessels as well, but we're going to focus on the Aron HaKodesh. So the Rambam decodes for us how this was done. And halachically, this is how the Aron was meant to be transported. It's well known. The Torah gives us the hints, and as we know, the oral Torah explains it for us and elucidates it for us and gives us the understanding of how the details were meant to be implemented. So the Rambam says like this: when the ark was transported from place to place, it should not be transported on an animal or on a wagon. Instead, it is a mitzvah for it to be carried on one's shoulders. And the Rambam, and that's from the Torah. Now the Rambam brings a story, and that's the story that we're going to focus on. And this story is brought down in the book of Shmuel, in the book of Shmuel, where it talks about David HaMelech when he wanted to bring the Aron to Yerushalayim. So it says that David HaMelech forgot, and he transported the Aron on a wagon. So I'm just going to give you the background information here. I forgot if we have the source text or not. Let's take a quick look. No, it doesn't. So the background information is that David HaMelech was transporting the Aron HaKodesh from the Philistines who had conquered it to Yerushalayim. Now, in transporting it, he transported it with a wagon, which was against halacha. And during the process of the transportation, the Aron seemed to be somewhat unstable. And Uzah, who was a holy man himself, was concerned that the Aron was not fully stable on the wagon. And he jumped to kind of save it. And in doing so, he passed away. I remember learning this as a child, by the way, in class when we learned this, and we were all very angry and upset. Like, what did Uzah do? He was trying to save the Aron from falling off the wagon. He was trying to fix the Aron HaKodesh. And Rashi says, and then Metzudas David explains as well, that what was happening here is that Aron HaKodesh is a very, very holy item, and it can only be handled by the individuals that are assigned to handle it. And most importantly, the Aron HaKodesh carries itself. So even when the Levites, the children of Kahas, the descendants of Kahas, who are Levites, but they had to be a specific family of the Levites, would carry it. The Aron would actually, the weight of the Aron would carry itself, and they would they were doing the facade of as if they were carrying it, but the Aron, because of the holiness of the item, it did not actually need carrying. It was a godly item that did not need human support. Not only that, a famous miracle of the Aron is it wouldn't take up physical space. If you measured, it says that if you would measure the space of the ark in the Holy of Holies, it wouldn't take up any space. In other words, if you measured the length of the room, and then you measured from the length from the wall to the ark, and then from one end of the ark, and then from the other end of the ark to the other wall, it would equal distance the amount of the entire room. In other words, the ark did not take up any space because it was a spiritual item, did not require human assistance. And by Uzah jumping to try to save the ark, he was negating the holiness of the ark, and he passed away. Now, this is beyond our comprehension. This does not make any sense to our human brains. Uzah was a holy man, as I mentioned. But what's interesting is the Midrash tells us, and we're going to learn this in a second, is that this was actually not Uzah's fault at all. It was actually King David's fault. And the Rambam's just giving us the basics here, but we're going to talk about this story in depth. Instead, the Rambam says it's a mitzvah to carry it on one's shoulders, as the verse states, for the holy task is their obligation, their meaning the children of Levi, they shall carry it on their shoulders. When the Levites carry the ark on their shoulders, they should carry it face to face with their backs pointed outwards and their faces inward. This was a very unique way of carrying it. So I think we might even have a picture. No. Sorry. But basically, usually if you're carrying, the ark had these poles, these rings and these poles that usually if you were carrying something heavy, so the people that are carrying it, the poles are on their shoulders, and they would all be facing the forward direction because you're walking forward. But that's not how they would carry the ark, because the two front men would have to look towards the ark, and the people in the back would look towards the ark as well. So you had two people walking backwards, or however many people were holding the poles. The point is, everybody was always facing the ark, the people that were carrying it. So number one, it was a mitzvah to carry the ark on the Levites' shoulders. And everyone, this is a very well-known halacha. King David knew the entire Torah. So how did he make this? How did he forget that? Number two, this is like going from one end to the other end. But the first question is, how did King David forget this law of you need to have the Levites carry it, or if you don't have Levites, at least it should be carried versus being put on a wagon. So number one, how did King David make that mistake? But number two, even with making the mistake, why is the punishment that Uzah has to pass away? Like, why is that such a painful result of the ark? By the way, as a not a fun fact, as a interesting fact, when there was a very famous very famous my vocabulary is like totally out tonight, but who the people that dig for artifacts, for ancient artifacts, what are they called again? Anyone want to help me?
Historian?
Oh, Hamatatiel. No, like there's a profession. What are these people?
Archaeologist?
Archaeologists. Thank you.
Okay.
So there was a very famous archaeologist in Jerusalem who was also a rabbi, that he in the 70s, after Israel liberated Jerusalem, he made it his mission that he's going to find the ark, because we know that Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, created special hiding places, and King Yoshia, the last king of Judah, was tasked with hiding it in the places of King Solomon. And even in the Second Temple, we didn't have the ark because it was hidden so well that nobody could get to it. But in these modern times, with all the archaeological tools and everything that we have, this archaeologist and rabbi was very interested in finding the ark. Number one, he wanted to be able to prove to the world that the ark existed and the temple existed, and he felt it was his mission to do so. And he wrote to the Rebbe, and I think he even had he found a tunnel that was unexplored, and he was pretty sure this is the tunnel that's going to lead to because it's known that the spot, this is actually talked about in the Talmud, that the spot of the hiding place of the ark is right under where the Holy of Holies was. So that's actually like as an accepted belief. And he found a tunnel that led to that direct spot, and he wanted to explore it. Now it's a very hard tunnel to like. You could go into the entrance to it. I think even today you can still go into the entrance of it, but you can't go like any further because it's like a very hard tunnel to explore. So he wrote to the Rebbe, asking the Rebbe's opinion if he should, push the Israeli authorities to let him explore it. It was also a very political, controversial thing because Israel wanted to leave the Temple Mount in the hands of the Waqf, and different subject. But the Rebbe wrote back, and I wrote back a bunch of things. I'm not going to mention the whole response, but one of the things that Rebbe wrote back is, what happens when you find the ark? It's dangerous. You can't get near it. The ark kills people. I mean, this story, Uzah touched it and died. So what the Rebbe was basically saying is the Torah teaches us that the ark is not to be messed with. I mean, in all the love that we have for the Torah, and the Torah tells us that the ark is a holy item, and it has to be treated a certain way. And even if by some miracle we're able to find it before Mashiach comes, it's dangerous. So here we have the history of the ark. This is actually a beautiful timeline. So first, we know that the ark was built in the desert by Bezalel under the instructions of Moshe. And then it was, once they crossed the Jordan River, it was the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was in the city of Shiloh. And it was there for many years, eventually under the guidance of Eli HaKohen. That was the story of Hannah, who came to pray for her son, which eventually was Shmuel, Samuel the prophet. The Philistines eventually conquered it, and they brought it to their cities, and every city they brought it to, there were plagues, and people were dying wherever the ark would go. So eventually they just gave it back, and it was just kept in hiding or kept like in a Jewish town. And then when King David was appointed king, he wanted to bring it back to Jerusalem, and that's unfortunately when Uzah, on the journey back to Jerusalem, is when Uzah touched it and he passed away. So now, going back to our questions, number one, how did David not know that you have to carry it? And number two, why was the punishment so harsh? So let's read. This is the actual story. So David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Bali Yehuda to go bring the ark of Hashem, which is called a name. I don't like the translation here. It's the ark of Hashem. It's called in the name of Hashem, and it has the kruvim upon it. And they set the ark of Hashem upon a new cart, and they carried it from the house of Avinadav that was on the hill, and Uzah and Achia, the sons of Avinadav, drove the new cart. And they brought it out of the house of Avinadav, which was on the hill, with the ark of Hashem, and Achia went before the ark. And David and the house of Israel made merry, they danced with manner of instruments and cypress wood and with harps. And Chitzoniyus is the jingles, with timbrels and with sistra and cymbals. So it was a big celebration. What happened? And they came to Ger Nachin, and Uzah put forth his hand to the ark and grasped hold of it because he thought that it was getting shaky, for the oxen were swaying it. And Hashem's anger was kindled against Uzah, and Hashem struck him down there for his error, and he passed away in front of the ark of Hashem. Now, the Gemara, which is also known as the Midrash in this case, because this is a Midrash side of Gemara. The Talmud has law in it, but it also has the Midrashic side of Torah, which is what we have over here. So the Gemara is teaching us a little bit about what's happening over here. So David taught. This is the interesting part. For what reason was David punished that Uzah passed away? What did King David do wrong? So it says he was punished because he called matters of Torah songs, as it stated, your statutes, in other words, the mitzvos, have been my songs in the house of my pilgrimage. And Hashem said to him, matters of Torah are so difficult and demanding that it is written, will you set your eyes upon it? It is gone. In other words, it's so hard to grasp. And you're calling them songs? For this reason, I will cause you to stumble in a matter that even school children know, as is written concerning the wagons brought to the Mishkan. Everyone knows that it has to be carried, and you used wagons. But to the sons of Kahas, he did not give, for the incumbent upon them was the work involving holy objects, which they were to carry on their shoulders. And David made this mistake and brought it on a wagon. So the Gemara is saying simply here is that because David, in his praises of Hashem and praises of the mitzvos, he called them songs. So Hashem is punishing him that, you're saying it's so simple. I'm going to show you how hard it is, and you're going to make a mistake on something so simple. Now, an obvious question is, why didn't anybody else correct David, even though he's the king? But someone else can correct. By the way, this is the verse here. Which your mitzvah, your statutes means your mitzvahs. Chukacha, by the way, is the type of mitzvahs that are beyond logic, which we're going to explain in a minute because it's part of what we're going to talk about. So chukim there's three levels of mitzvot. There's mishpatim, which are the mitzvahs that are logic, like do not kill, honor your parents, treat people with kindness, love your neighbor. Those are the logical mitzvahs. And then there's the edus, which is the symbolic mitzvah, such as Shabbat is a symbolic mitzvah, tefillin is a symbolic mitzvah, many other holiday mitzvahs are symbolic mitzvahs. Chukim are the mitzvahs that are beyond comprehension, such as the red heifer is the poster child of the beyond comprehension mitzvahs as a chok, as a mitzvah that's beyond comprehension. Not mixing wool and linen is one of those mitzvahs. Milk and meat is another one of those mitzvahs. So David HaMelech refers to those mitzvahs are the songs. In other words, those mitzvahs are the most complex mitzvahs to understand, and he's referring to them as songs. But really, what's so bad? What did he do wrong? He's praising Hashem. In fact, there's a Midrash that says the entire world was created just so David HaMelech could sing his praises to Hashem. That's how powerful they were. In fact, when Shlomo HaMelech built the temple and it was time to dedicate the temple and it was time for the doors to open, the doors refused to open. And Shlomo HaMelech said, open in the merit of Abraham, and open the merit of Yitzchak, and open the merit of Yaakov. And he went through all the people. Moses didn't open until he finally said, open in the merit of King David and his Psalms. And then the temple opened. So this is beautiful stuff here. Why was he punished, and why was it a tragedy in that sense? So what we're going to do now, I'm going to leave this screen on for a bit. And what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of Pnimiyus and Chitzoniyus, which is the inner aspect of Torah and the external aspect of Torah. Because to answer this question about King David's mistake and to why it merited or why this happened, and ultimately what our takeaway is, we have to understand something much deeper about the Torah's relationship with the world, and more specifically, the Torah's relationship with us. So let's simplify the concept here in a way that we all understand. We all know that every human being, think of yourself, there's two automatic sides of you. Just by being a functioning human being in this world, there's the side of you that you show to the public, and there's a side of you that's just for yourself. Whatever that is. Everyone has different levels of this. Some people just are living their truth no matter what. Even those people, they still have a part of themselves that are just reserved for themselves. In other words, we conditioned ourselves for whatever. We are conditioned to be living in a society, living as a functioning human being for society. So we have that side of ourselves that functions in a way that society could we could interact with society, society can interact with us, and however we choose that to be. And then we have the side of us that's just for us, and we reserve that just for us. It could be when we believe nobody's watching. It could be whatever it is, or it could be what goes on in our head. There's the side of us that's just about us. Call it a double life, call it whatever. It is what it is. It's not like untruthful. It's just human. Because as a human being, there's going to be things that you don't want to share with the public. You don't want to advertise, and you don't have to advertise. You're not expected to. And because you are expected to be a functioning human being, you behave a certain way. So there's two sides to it. That is a very simplified version of Pnimiyus and Chitzoniyus. The Chitzoniyus means the external. That's your external self. The Pnimiyus is your internal self. God has a Pnimiyus, internal self, and God has a Chitzoniyus, the external self as well. We have no clue what God's Pnimiyus is. Even Kabbalah, even like the greatest prophets have no clue who God is for himself. It's impossible. God doesn't share that. That's beyond our comprehensions. All we do know is how God decides to relate to us. Even like from a Kabbalistic level, to understand the depth of God's essence, like to understand, it's all about how God relates to us. So when we talk about God's essence and the infinity and all these things, it's because God chose that the mitzvahs should be that when we do a mitzvah, we connect to God, but that's all still in how God relates to us. So everything we know is about God's external side, showing what he wants to show to us. The Torah, on the other hand, is an anomaly because the Torah contains the essence. The Torah also contains the external and the internal, the Chitzoniyus and the Pnimiyus. Because the Torah is God's wisdom, and the Torah is the Torah is basically God's essence being shared with us. But the Torah on its own has its own inner essence as well as its external presentation. What do I mean by that? So we're going to start with the luchot, right? The tablets. One of the reasons why in Chabad you'll never see, if you can see my pointer, you'll never see luchot, the tablets with a round top. The Rebbe was very against the image of a round top because it's inaccurate. The luchot were actually rectangles like this, and according to the Midrash and Kabbalah, it says that it was carved all the way through, but it was the letters were like the right direction on either side that you would look at them. And not only that, it says that the letter wasn't just double-sided, it was actually quadruple-sided. It was a four-way luchot. So you could see the letters on this side, in other words, on the sides of them, as well as on the front facing and the back facing, and it would go all the way through. The letters would go all the way through, and miraculously, whatever side you'd be looking at it, it would be in the right direction. Okay, let's go further, and I'm going to explain what that means. The tablets were God's work, and the inscriptions was God's inscriptions engraved on the tablets. 1 second. God engraved his words directly onto the tablets. Miraculously, the writing could be read from all four sides. Four sides, meaning not just the front and the back, which is what most people think. And as the Tosfos Yom Tov tells us, this is a commentary on the Mishnah, tells us, in the inscriptions and the words of the Bartanura, it could be read from all four sides. What seems most correct to me is that this was miraculous, an act of God. The author of Asara Mamaris writes on that statement that this was a divine act beyond our comprehension, not the ordinary handiwork of some have imagined, as if someone sketched it before us in a study hall as a youngster, and the youngster wrote it. Okay, so this is a spiritual, miraculous thing happening on the luchot. Now, why is God just trying to show off to us? Like, what's happening? We know God's miracle. We know God could do miracles. Like, what's he trying? Like, what's the point of this miracle? So, sorry, I just made a boo-boo here. Sorry. So what's the point of this miracle? So because every miracle that God does is for a reason, it's for a lesson, it's to teach us a certain way. Everything is about how it applies to us. So Rechnina Bar Yitzchak said there are three byproducts, reflections of or a lesser form in this world. The byproduct of death, in other words, like the reflection of death in this world, is sleep. So, for example, it says that when you sleep, it's like a 60th of death. The byproduct of prophecy is a dream. This does not mean that a dream is prophecy, but it means that a dream is like just like sleep is like a 60th of death. A dream is like a similar understanding of what prophecy is like. And the byproduct of the world to come, in other words, when Mashiach, is Shabbat. And Rabbi Avin added two more. The byproduct of the supernal light of this is the sun, in other words, of godly light. And the byproduct of supernal wisdom is the Torah. That last line is why the miracle of the Luchot took place. And let's go back to the picture of the Luchot, because I like the visuals here. Sorry, I didn't realize how far back we're going. What God was showing with this miracle of the Luchot, of it being written on every side, is that there's an external side of the Torah external message of the Torah, so to speak, telling us that I guess the byproduct of everything you learn in Torah is actually hinting at something so much deeper within it. So when you see a beautiful house that's decorated on the outside and the yard is gorgeous and everything is meticulously manicured and everything is perfect, your automatic assumption is that the inside is even more beautiful. And it probably is. The miracle here that the Torah is not just beautiful on the inside, the influence and the impact is also on the outside. And whatever way you approach the Torah, it's always going to resonate and reflect with you. It's always going to connect with you. Now, why did it go all the way through? Because there's something in the depth of Torah that brings about this higher level of understanding, this higher level of comprehension. What is that exactly? So let's go further. So this is from Shlomo HaMelech. I was a nursling beside him, and I was his delight every day, playing before him at all times. What are we talking about? This is talking about before Hashem. In other words, trying to understand Hashem's ways. It's like you're a child before Hashem. So a byproduct is secondary, yet King Shlomo describes the Torah as something God delights in constantly. So what does that mean? If the Torah is only a byproduct of supernal wisdom, but Hashem is still delighting in the Torah, then the Torah has to be so much more than a byproduct. So what's actually happening here? So the truth is, there's the external side of Torah, which is the byproduct, and then there's the internal part of Torah. There's the essence of Torah that is what God is delighting in. There's a depth level of Torah that is so much deeper, and that is not just the byproduct, that is the essence. So this is going to get a little deep, but it's so important to understand because this really reflects the whole idea of why we study Torah, of why we study every part of the Torah, and why there's no such thing as like this part of Torah is not important and this part is more important than the other. So let's start with the right. What is Chitzoniyus? Chitzoniyus means the external. What is the Chitzoniyus of the Torah? Chitzoniyus of the Torah basically means what is the Torah's influence visually on you, right? The Torah tells us we have to live our life a certain way, right? We have to do that. We have to keep Shabbos, or we have to light Shabbos candles, or we have to keep kosher, right? So all of those things are external elements of how the Torah relates to us. External isn't bad. I want to point this out. External is not a bad thing. It's important. It's the external influence. By the way, a name is external. Your whole name is not an internal thing. It's not a essence thing. Your name is an external part of you. You only need it because so people could relate to you. If you lived on an island alone or you were the only human being in the world, you wouldn't need a name. I know that we say the name connects to our essence, but generally speaking, your name is an external part of you. It's not, so the external part of Torah is Jewish law. Understanding how to live as a Jew is the external part of Torah. Even lessons, inspiration is the external part of Torah because this is all about how it influences us and how it plays a role in our life and how we actually act, how it translates into our life. These are all very important things, but it's the fact external means that it's the actionable items. What is the Pnimiyus Torah? Pnimiyus Torah is where you're trying to get to the essence of what exactly is the Torah. What's exactly behind it all? What's the core of this? So imagine, I'm going to think of a example. Like imagine there's a new product or a new invention or a new idea. Think of your respective fields or respective areas of expertise or passions. So imagine there's like this new exciting venture or something that just news that comes out, right? So most people just gravitate to the way that thing relates to them. So let's say it's a new medicine, right? A new medicine comes out that is like relevant to everyone. So you want that medicine because it affects you, and you want to know how do you get that medicine? Is there any side effects? All you want to know is how does that relate to you? You want that external side of the connection to it. Same goes for any other aspect or any other part of life. The Pnimiyus is when you don't care about how it relates to you at all. All you want to know is, I want to get to the essence of what exactly is behind all this. What's the source? What's the core of everything? What is I want to take it apart. I want to understand everything. I want to understand behind. I want to understand the thought process. So think of a relationship, not a romantic one. Think of a these social these networking, like business networking relationships or social networkings when you go to meet people, right? So most people, when they're meeting with others, adults, so usually you're trying to find common ground that you could connect with, right? So you like, where do you live? Where you from? Oh yeah, what do you like? Which sports team do you whatever? You find common ground because you want to make it relevant to you, or you want to find relevant conversations, relevant stuff that makes sense to you. That's a Chitzoniyus conversation. It's an external conversation because it's all about trying to find external factors. You're trying to find things that could become a connector to you, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that's what it is. It's trying to find something that could relate to both of you. Pnimiyus would be trying to get to know the essence of the person. Who are you? Who are you? You have no agendas whatsoever. You're not trying to get a business deal, get a connection. You're not trying to. There's no agenda whatsoever. Like, you may never see this person ever again. All you want to know is, who are you? Like, who is the essence of you? That's the Pnimiyus. A really good story that reflects this is the Alter Rebbe, the Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, was holding his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, whose mother passed away when he was a little boy. So the Alter Rebbe was basically his de facto caretaker or caregiver. So he had his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, on his lap, and the Tzemach Tzedek, the grandson, I think it was a 2-year-old or 1-year-old, or he was a baby. He walked, but he was a baby, and he was playing with the Alter Rebbe's beard. The Alter Rebbe had a long beard, and he was playing with his beard. And as he was playing with his beard, he said "Zaidi, Zaidi," which means grandpa in Yiddish. And the Alter Rebbe said, "No, that's Zaidi's beard." So the Tzemach Tzedek pointed to his forehead and said, "Zaidi, Zaidi." And the Alter Rebbe said, "No, that's Zaidi's forehead, or that's Zaidi's head." And then the Tzemach Tzedek pointed to his chest, so "Zaidi, Zaidi." And the Alter Rebbe said, "No, that's Zaidi's heart." And he kept on doing this. And finally, the Tzemach Tzedek got off of his lap, and he went to the next room. And a few minutes later, he pretended as if he got hurt. He said, "Ow!" He started listening. He started like as if he got hurt, like a noise or "ow." And the Alter Rebbe jumps up and runs to the next room. And as soon as he comes into the next room, the Tzemach Tzedek points to him and says, "There's Zaidi." And the way the story was told to us is like, that's the essence. You can't capture it in a specific body part or a specific, it's the essence of a person. So what we want to accomplish with understanding what is the essence of Torah is that there's no sense of what does this do for us? What's the inspiration for me? Does this help me live my life? Does this give me a good content to share with others? Does this give me good material? You're getting to the essence of Torah. So let us now bring this back. We're going to bring it back in a few minutes. I know this is a little longer than usually, but this is so important and crucial to understanding how the Torah relates to us. So this is actually from the Tzemach Tzedek is actually wrote this. So what we're about to read, and this is going to explain. Both are true. What are both true? In other words, is Torah the byproduct of supernal wisdom, or is Torah's supernal wisdom itself? So when it says the byproduct of supernal wisdom is the Torah, it refers to the Torah that was given to us. In other words, the external aspect of Torah, the applicable part of Torah to our lives. This is called the level of the backside of Torah, the external. The Torah is presented to us. But the root purpose and the essence of the Torah, about that it says, "I was his delight every day." That's the essence of Torah. To explain, The aspect of godly wisdom, as it is vested in the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, is called the backside of God's wisdom. Because on every level, the backside is the outer and lower gradations within the particular level. It is the part capable of extending downwards to integrate within the creation and give it life. So therefore, it has to be able to have an externalization of it. It has to be willing to go down into this world. The inner side, the inner essence of Torah, is the level itself, as utterly united with God. It doesn't lend itself to being an external factor or some sort of lesson or some sort of, it can't be encapsulated in some content folder or something. This can be understood by way of simple analogy from a human being. The soul has 5 graded levels within it: intellect, emotion, thought, speech, and action. Each higher than the next. And action is the lowest of all of them. The life force that spreads from the soul and manifests into action is as nothing compared to the life force that spreads into speech. And that, in turn, is as nothing compared to what spreads into emotions and intellect. So, too, is the very same way. Whatever extends from God's wisdom into to influence the lower realms is as nothing compared to the inner dimension, as it is united with God, before whom all is nothing. And any flow to finite created beings is, so to speak, a fall and dilution relative to inner sort and a revelation state to God himself. So when we connect to Torah in a sense of how to live our lives, so from this is understood that the Torah that was revealed to Moshe, our teacher, is still called the backside by the byproduct of God's wisdom, because it's sort of the byproduct of the supernal light. But the essence of Torah, as it is God's own knowledge, so to speak, that is the inner dimension. So to keep it simple, the idea of the Torah in a way to help us live our life, because it has to extend itself to the lower worlds, it's a lower level of godly revelation in the Torah, which means that it's the external aspect of Torah. Now, it's still Torah, it's still God's wisdom, but it's more of a reflection of God's wisdom because it has to manifest into this world. The essence of Torah is God himself, is connected to God himself. Now, what does it mean that the luchos had no backside? Because every direction that you look at, it would still have the letters, the words written on it from any direction you would look, to teach us that the essence of Torah, the essence of God, there is no backside. It's all God. It's the essence. And that's really what we should strive to, is ultimately that, yes, we have to study the external part first, but we have to ultimately strive to get to the essence of Torah. Because when we do that, we'll be able to really connect our souls to God in a way that it will draw it back down into the external elements of Torah and then elevate the whole world with it. What does that mean? The tablets in the ark were drawn from the innermost dimension of holiness. That is why they had no front or back, even in the physical sense. The writing could be read equally from every side, something that defies human logic. This was because the higher inward light shone openly within them. So that miracle was to teach us that there's an essence that embedded deep within it that doesn't lend itself to have a front or a back or anything else. It's all the essence of God. I'm going to skip a little bit. Actually, no, I don't want to skip this. But then we might skip a little bit because I want to bring it back to our question about King David. So mitzvos are called God's supernal will, even though mitzvos are the external part of Torah, because it's how we live our lives. The inner core of that will is the light. King David's praise, "Your mitzvos were like songs to me," refers to the supreme will of mitzvos, which is considered external relative to God's delight. Think of a melody you love. You can play the same tune over and over and it stays sweet. In fact, when a song really speaks to you, you replay it and the pleasure doesn't fade, it deepens. So too with chukim. Chukim, remember, is the mitzvahs that we don't understand. A chok is a mitzvah whose reason isn't accessible, like the red heifer or shatnez, which is wool and linen together. In truth, all mitzvahs are chukim, but really every mitzvah, even the logical ones, we do it because God commanded it. Because the reasons we're given are not the real ultimate reasons as they exist above. To us, they are God's decree. This is his will beyond our grasp. So there's a depth to every mitzvah that's beyond our comprehension. So what was King David trying to say? And that's precisely why they are exceedingly sweet. What we touch in every mitzvah is his will itself, which is which no created mind can comprehend, since will isn't something that we can grasp. In other words, the will of God. The will that's in tzitzis, to wear tzitzis for us, is no different than the will in tefillin. It's like hearing the same beloved melody again and again because it is His will, and it delights us each time anew. So David HaMelech was trying to say in his songs is that what we're able to experience from the Torah is a song. It's exciting because we get to experience what we know is so deep in God, but we get to experience it because we get to participate in it. In other words, God gave us the mitzvos and the ability to have a part in it. So what's wrong with that? I'm skipping this part. So what's wrong with King David saying that the mitzvos and Torah is like a song, and you celebrating the fact that we can have that? And the answer, and here's the part here's the ultimate point here. Remember, David HaMelech, King David says, your chukim, your mitzvos, your Torah is like a song to me, and he's punished because when he's transporting the ark, Uzah passes away because he forgot the law that the ark has to be transported on the shoulders, not on a wagon. What did he do wrong? So David HaMelech was focused on the backside of the Torah, how the Torah relates to us, the part that's a song to us, the part that we're able to connect with, the part that we're able to feel that Hashem is connecting with us because we're doing a mitzvah. But Hashem wanted more from David. Remember, a tzaddik, a holy person, God expects a whole lot more than he expects from the rest of us. Every single one of us there's a different level of expectation. For David HaMelech, for King David, God had a high expectation of him, which was, don't stop at the songs. Don't stop just because you feel like you're connected, that you have the mitzvahs. There's a whole nother level, a whole nother dimension that you're missing out on. And you're sort of accepting the fact that you're, limited to the external. And how are you not even trying, or how are you not striving to reach this higher level? So this part we're going to skip. This is why the mitzvah, specifically, I don't know what this picture is, but the mitzvah of carrying the ark, they had to face the ark, whether you're standing in front of it or whether you're standing behind it. All of the Levites had to face, actually in this case it was the Kohanim, had to face the ark, because the idea of the ark represented this inner essence of God, this inner essence of the Torah, the inner dimension, not the external, but the internal. The internal part that is limitless. The internal part that is the essence of God, that's not about how God relates to us, but this actually connects us. This is the revelation of godliness in the essence. And therefore the face, let's go back to that over here. The face corresponds to the inner dimension. In other words, we're connecting to God's essence, where God is really showing us the essence of who He is. Now, and the Tzemach Tzedek explained this over here, but we're not going to read it right now because it's a little bit more complex than what I want to go into right now. So that's why they had to face. That's why the whole idea of carrying the ark on your shoulders was about facing the ark. There's no backside to the ark. There's no backside to the tablets, because it's all about recognizing that this is the essence, there's a depth to the Torah here. But by David HaMelech saying that your chukim are songs to me, he's kind of just focused on the backside. He's forgetting that there's an essence here. So let's read this over here. David HaMelech, King David, focused on the Torah's outer layer and did not internalize the deeper divine significance of each mitzvah. Forgetting the proper way to carry the ark was a result of him missing the deeper spiritual alignment that carrying the ark represents. So now, what is the real expectation that Hashem had from King David? Before we can draw this down into us, King David was the ultimate leader of the Jewish people. And that's why Mashiach is going to be descendant of King David. That's why we refer to King David always as the leader of the Jewish people, the Davidic dynasty, and he's actually mentioned in the Torah the most, even more than Moshe. What God wanted is not necessarily to reach the level of understanding the inner dimension, because even Moshe couldn't do that. But what God wanted is for David HaMelech to not accept the status quo. The biggest mistake we can make in our journey of Torah study, and this right here is the point. The biggest mistake we can make in our Torah journey is to think that all we need or all we should strive for is this level or this layer of Torah. That's the mistake. It doesn't mean that you're ever going to get to the point of whatever, but if you stop trying to ascend, if you stop trying to grow, that's where it becomes a problem. That's where it becomes a sin. At least for King David, that's where it became a sin. Because there's the higher we climb in our Torah study, the closer we get to God. And it's literally as if we're climbing, and then we just decide we're done. And literally there's a treasure at the top of the ladder. So when we have to first start by studying how to live as a Jew. That's studying Jewish law. Or we're studying Chumash and Rashi, whatever it is. But then we have to study how to live as a Jew. We want to study Midrash. We want to be inspired. We want to learn learn lessons from everything. We want to study Talmud. We want to study it all. But then we need to study what is the essence of God. We have to know God. What is the essence of God? What is the essence of this world? Not how it relates to me. One of the biggest mistakes that people make with Kabbalah is that they're always looking for, how does this relate to me? Like, this month is special, this day is special, this is because it's related to, it's all about how it connects to me. That's making the same mistake as like, it's all about how it relates to me and how it makes me feel validated and special. The ultimate level of studying Torah is to forget about yourself, lose yourself, and focus on trying to understand the essence of God, trying to become one with God. And the more you do that, the more you could actually connect with the wisdom of Torah. And as long as we're striving for that, even momentarily to reach that, then we could unlock and we could really reveal what God intended for us to accomplish and what really God is hiding in the Torah for us. And that was the gift that was given to us through Chassidus. The Baal Shem Tov took Kabbalah, which was unattainable for so many people because they were misusing it and they were misinterpreting it, and they were looking for ways to validate their own existence and validate their own understanding of God and God's relationship with them. And the Baal Shem Tov was able to bring it down in a way that we could connect and bring that nullification to ourselves in a way that we forget about ourselves and strive to grow higher and connect to Hashem. And every single one of the Rabbeim, every single one of the Rebbes were able to bring it down on a different level for us to internalize it and come to the essence of Torah, which brings us to the essence of God. And that's why it's so crucial. It doesn't mean we negate other parts of the Torah, because it's all important. But this gives us the core of remembering that there's always a deeper layer. So even a simple mitzvah like tzedakah, or a simple mitzvah like any little mitzvah, there's a deep thing that's happening here. There's worlds that are moving, there's angels, there's things that are flying, there's so much happening when you do a mitzvah. And that is what we're trying to tap into, not to know the technicals, but to understand that we're getting closer to connect to Hashem, to the essence of Hashem, through everything that we do and everything that we study. And that is what Hashem wanted from King David. Hashem wanted King David to keep on striving for that goal, keep on striving for that connection, because if the moment we stop striving, then we sort of lose out on all the possibilities of the whole purpose of the Torah being given to us in the first place. So may we be able to reveal the essence of the Torah, and which we know the Torah that Mashiach will teach us will be that essence, but we can already start practicing and striving towards it. May it happen immediately. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all so much. Thanks for joining. And of course, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you have any questions.